asset to Ireland. We profit from the stable and predictable economic environment created by the Union, something we have helped ourselves to create. This has enabled us to develop and prosper to an extraordinary degree in recent times. The history of our EU membership vindicates this belief many times over. The transformation of our economy, the transformation of the relationship between this people of this island and the transformation of our sense of our place in the wider world have all gathered momentum during our years of EU membership. What Ireland needs in the years ahead in order to consolidate and build upon these great treaties is that we continue to provide those conditions laid out in the Reform Treaty. The Reform Treaty, I believe, creates that type of union. The EU's input to Ireland is beyond question. Our economic development would not have happened in the way that it has without the stimulus provided by our European membership. The direct financial and technical assistance has helped modernise our infrastructure. The Common Agricultural Policy has ensured that our farmers receive fair prices. The single market has provided Irish business with access to a large and lucrative European market. This has created employment at home and made Ireland an attractive place for investment by foreign companies. The provisions, principles and values of the European treaties, which have facilitated our political, economic and social development, are left in place by the Reform Treaty. The broad institutional balance which has served Ireland so well also remains in place. This balance has always allowed us and other small countries to have our voice heard and to defend our interests. No one who looks at Ireland's record as an EU member can have any doubt about the value to us of that membership. In providing for Europe's further evolution along the path that has been followed for the past 50 years, the Reform Treaty passes a vital Irish test. Some opponents of the treaty here in Ireland have argued that a vote against the treaty will somehow enable us to send out a message that we want the treaty remade to our perfect satisfaction. There are two difficulties with this idea. First, the outcome reached at Lisbon reflects a balance of interests amongst 27 member states. No country got everything it wanted. Secondly, and more importantly, from a purely self-interested point of view, the treaty represents a very good outcome for Ireland. On the issue of major sensitivity, such as, for instance, unanimity in taxation and defence areas, or the general principle of equality amongst member states, we are fully satisfied with the outcome. No Irish interest would be served by creating a political crisis in Europe by turning our backs on a treaty that has, to a considerable extent, been made in Ireland, and that responds to our needs and aspirations. As we face current and future challenges on our domestic front, such as the need to safeguard the livelihoods and quality of life of our own citizens, Ireland's membership of the EU is as vital as ever. Imagine for a second if we were to face the current uncertainty in the global economy on our own, outside the European monetary system. The second point I want to address is what I would call the democratic agenda. The EU has at times been criticised for being undemocratic and inaccessible. This has always been an unfair accusation, I believe, as someone who has sat at Council of Ministers meetings for the last nearly 11 years. It's an unfair accusation as the Union is controlled jointly by its democratically elected governments and by the European Parliament. It's true that the unique intergovernmental character of the Union means that it can sometimes seem removed from its citizens. Its structures are undoubtedly complex, but this is unavoidable as it is required to serve the needs of now 27 very different and diverse member states. In the negotiations that led to the Reform Treaty, discussions on how to bring the Union closer to its citizens were to the fore. This is as it should have been, given that the European Council in 2001 listed more democracy as one of the core issues to be addressed in negotiating a further treaty. The Reform Treaty offers some real gains in this regard. A key section of the treaty is devoted to setting out the values and democratic principles on which the Union is based. It specifies that the Union is founded on representative democracy, and it makes clear that every citizen shall have the right to participate in the democratic life of the Union. The treaty contains concrete measures that will enhance democracy within the Union. It strengthens the role of national parliaments by giving them a direct input into European legislation. The provision whereby a sufficient number of national parliaments can object to a particular proposal is a genuine step forward. It will enable national parliaments to ensure that the Union does not exceed its authority. The treaty also gives national parliaments a right to veto any proposal to move issues from unanimity in the European Council or Council of Ministers to qualified majority voting. These new powers will enable national parliaments to contribute more fully to the democratic life of the Union. Given that most European citizens still feel most connected to the national parliaments, these measures will also help the Union connect more with its own citizens. These steps will serve to encourage better coordination between national parliaments and EU institutions. They should also provide a stimulus to better coordination between national parliaments on EU issues themselves. The treaty also strengthens democracy at the European level by increasing the number of areas in which the European Parliament will share lawmaking with the Council of Ministers, and also by strengthening the Parliament's budgetary role. Another initiative, the Citizens' Initiative, is a welcome innovation which promises to give citizens of the Union a more direct say in European matters. This measure has the potential to breathe new life into the democratic functioning of the Union. It will draw European citizens from different member states together in pursuit of shared goals. The central feature of the European democracy is the protection of individual rights and freedoms. The Reform Treaty raises the protection of the rights of European citizens to a new level. It will do so by making the Charter on Fundamental Rights legally binding on the Union's institutions and on the Member States when they are implementing EU law. It will also allow the Union to accede to the European Convention on Human Rights, which, together with the European Court of Human Rights, is the foundation stone of human rights protection in Europe. When I spoke here last year, I remarked that amidst all the institutional arguments about more Europe or less Europe, what we really need to do is do more Europe. This brings me to my third theme, which I will call the Union's delivery agenda. Understandably, this is a theme which will most interest the citizens of Europe, and